My head right now feels like a flask of brandy, but I have not had a drop. At this exact moment, the Kundalini Shakti is stirring in my body, and it feels as if everything is a symphony. If I focus on the wind which is blowing curtains at me, I can feel it with an intensity that is magical, as if it is a massage. But then it catapults me further and deeper. And I'm part of a grove of trees, and I can feel the wind blowing on its body. I can feel pollen. And not just in an abstract way. It's as if the pollen is in my ear and there's a butterfly flitting inside my bones. A brief while ago, there was a dog, a big dog, barking and making quite a racket. On a normal day, it would have been irritating. But today it felt as if it was a musical instrument. And then a connection happened. I wasn't just listening to the dog. My navel chakra and the dog's navel chakra held hands and connected up. And I could feel its abdomen shaking and moving from deep within. And that was a little strange because I'd had breakfast half an hour ago. And when that happened, I began to sense that breakfast. As my body sees it, as my body touches it, as my body pulls and retrieves lovely nutrients. But that's not something that we are normally used to, so it can be very disorienting. First question most of us humans ask is, how does it benefit me? You are in conversation with spiritual visionaries Celia and Tarun Cherian, whose visions of cosmic oneness have shown the world a different way to grow spiritually and to heal. Heightened living is the first great gift of the Kundalini. Imagine just breathing in and feeling as if every breath is champagne. Imagine greeting the dawn with the joy of a songbird. Imagine feeling the morning sun, but feeling it the way a dog curled up in the winter sun does. Imagine walking on earth and feeling the earth kiss your feet. With the Kundalini awakened, you do not live at these great heights all the time. It's like having a master singer at home who waits for the time when we're willing to listen to the melodies of life. See far, see deep, see within. Well, there was a time when we were taking one of our deep spiritual seekers in. Well, she had an issue with her son. And she was wondering if the son's digestion was good. And using the Shakti, we went into the child's stomach. And the mother half merged with the child. And she could actually taste the food in the child's stomach. Now, think of how intimate disgusting and informative it is. Now, the ability to sense goes in such a wide spectrum. One of the things that we were alive to at one particular point in time was the ability to sense the quality of the earth and soil. So we could almost taste the soil. This sense can also taste people's hormones and feelings on a mass level. So what is a country going through? How can it cope? We now share with you a very beautiful technique to strengthen your intuition, to see better with the Kundalini Shakti's eyes. Technique, all that you do, you're taking your left pointer finger and your right ring finger. You're touching the pointed finger to this point on your lip and the ring finger from your right hand to this point on your eyebrow. You'll feel it. Now, the moment you do it in this particular fashion, there'll be energy being generated in your lower abdomen area. You're now going to do something which requires a certain degree of mental discipline. You're only going to be breathing through your left nostril. After a point, a particular nadi in the body, not one but three, open up. And they're all connected to see clearly and being able to look at the forces beneath the surface of life and to anticipate the most likely outcome in a situation. Here are some pointers for those who will use this intuition technique. Most people experiencing some issues with fertility will head off to a fertility clinic. But one of the Kundalini's great gifts is to fill the cradle of life. There was a very beautiful case in which a couple who longed for children found themselves haunted by something very strange and weird and powerful, but almost creepy. So what did we do? We held that being, whatever it was. And it was a Shakti of a forest. And it was essentially inviting them to come to the forest and to make love. Anyway, as a compromise solution, we got that couple to make love on a huge terrace at night, several nights in fact. And one night, our energy eyes could see 6 figures join the couple on the terrace. It was a profound moment of great power. Moving elsewhere, the Kundalini can inspire great creativity. It also inspires sexual rights that sends out immense power into the world. Since the forces unleashed by fertility, birthing children, having children, sexuality can be very explosive. We will not be sharing any specific techniques out here, except to say that in our book, Miraculous Mudras, there's an entire section in the abdomen chakra chapter and the root chapter, which deals with awakening the Kundalini Shakti and managing intense sexual desires. The Kundalini's gift of power. One of our most brilliant students is today a Kalarippayattu master. We had asked him to do an exercise when we were teaching him, a particular kind of walk. And when he did it, you didn't feel that a human was in the room. You felt that a panther had entered. The Kundalini can give extraordinary physical gifts that some claim, but the Kundalini can also amplify our actions, add depth to even the smallest action, a word we speak. I'm going to say the same sentence twice. You are a magical being. And in this, I connected to my soul, and it gave that sentence a certain depth. Now I'm going to do it, speaking it, empowered by the Kundalini Shakti. You are a magical being. And I want you to go back and listen to those two statements and again, and you will understand the difference. You are a magical being, spoken by the soul, creates a star above life, an ideal. While when the Kundalini Shakti says, you are a magical being, it creates a heart within the person which pulses with force and courage. Buffy, our doggy daughter, is now a planetary spirit guide. See, the other day she'd come home pleased as punch, and we asked her, why, what is it that you had done? And she had explained that she had changed the course of a storm. Really, we said? And how did you do that? And she explained, well, there are forces like round these spirals, she explained. And if you shift some of them, then the storm goes running away somewhere else. Be it a human or a mountain, the Kundalini can help in healing. So, for example, there was a case where a woman had had a very terrible, abusive experience as a child. And as a result of that, it had interfered with her sex life with her husband. And she had a condition which is called vaginismus, where the muscle just clenched tight, harder than a fist. In that case, using the Kundalini Shakti, we went in deep, took her to the point where her muscles would just freeze up. And we separated the emotion from her body response. And the Kundalini allowed her muscles to laugh and dance as it once did when she had an animal past life. But if you were to think that this is a magic wand that can shift anything, well, the answer is yes and no. For the Kundalini merges with another's body, another's Shaktis. So we were actually reliving the terror of what the child felt. Another time, in a hill station where we were staying, where the rain was very heavy, very dense. And as we were communicating with the hills, we could sense that There was one hill that was on the very edge of a massive landslide. So we sent our Shaktis out using a chant too to help bind the hill. The energies that we sent and the energies that the hills generated formed a binding pattern, and also something else. It found a place deep within where the hill shifted just ever so slightly, and a fissure opened where the extra water ran off deep within into an underground canyon and safely away. But undoubtedly, the greatest gift of the Kundalini Shakti is spiritual growth. Things weren't going well for Ravina, a creative person. She'd been intensely bullied at work to the point of which she'd almost broken down. Her career had gone stuck. Her father had just broken up with her mother. And her sibling was no longer talking to her. When we dealt with her, and as we were giving healing to her, it was as if something emerged from us and started dancing around her, almost like ribbons of light. One session, but a beautiful session. And after that healing session, which lasted about half an hour, Ravina got up, tears streaming down her eyes. And she said, I feel as if I've come alive again. And she later sent us a message saying, you put the color back into my life. And indeed, in that particular session, Kundalini Shaktis had gone and touched portions of her, Shaktis within her, and opened them up. And so that sense of being blessed, the sense of having a secret garden deep within her, which she could reach out to, was always there for her. Many spiritualists say the word, we're on the spiritual path, we are self-realizing. And that perhaps is not what Kundalini awakened spirituality is about. For the Kundalini doesn't just wake you up. It awakens very often the world around us. There was a time when Celia and I, about 20 years ago, both of us were awakening our Shaktis to a very strong level. So we had gone to a friend's farm, and we were just wandering around the farm, and it had trees, and it had rivers, it had lakes, low hills, the works. And Celia was walking ahead of me, and she'd crossed a small stream. And it's as if she was being pulled in a particular direction, as if she knew where she had to go. And I was trailing behind. And then I suddenly saw her go and vanish into a grove of trees. And as I followed, and I came and I stopped, for it was a grove of trees forming a kind of a cathedral. And in the middle of it was Celia, lit by a shaft of light, her hands held out, eyes closed. And she was smiling and caught in a trance. And that whole space of 30, 40 feet felt sacred, filled with energy. I did not dare enter into it. And I stood at the extremities and closed my eyes and I felt the energies. And then I could see that from Celia, energies were dancing out and around, and the whole of the grove of trees was reaching out and touching her and dancing around her. The land and Celia were talking to each other, were connecting. And so we see that if a spiritualist who has awakened their Shaktis comes to a land, then very often, depending on what elemental has been connected to, the land starts responding and transforming and changing. The land is no longer the same land. And that is such a huge, immense thought. But do the Shaktis, does the Kundalini only stop with this world of ours and the energies in and around it? We were giving healing to a maid of a close relative. She was seated in a chair and Celia and I were giving her healing. And suddenly during the healing, something very dramatic happened. The maid almost leapt up with a loud scream. It was almost as if she was catapulted up, not even leapt up. And the relative who had been in the other room came running to see what we were doing to her maid. Anyway, the maid sat down again and kept talking about everywhere there was lightning, and lightning was crawling up her legs, and lightning was shimmering through her chest, and lightning was blazing out of her eyes, and lightning was spreading around her head. It was very apparent to us that healing had awakened her Shaktis, her Kundalini force. So we created a package for her of prayer and herbs and meditations and actions. And every time we'd come and meet the relative, every few years, we'd connect up with the maid and ask her how she was doing. And as time went, she said, I increasingly like dealing with children, and I like dealing with gardening and plants more than housework. And every time we looked and connected, we could see that the energies were still awake and alive in her being. After a few years, she passed away. And we did follow her into the other world. And we looked at her every once in a while. She was born again, then born again. Just a month ago, Celia and I were talking to some of our dear spirit guides and some of the larger coterie of beings that come to us. And one of them was a crackly blue energy, like a swirl of energy, wearing a sari. And she turned and she looked at us and said, do you recognize me? And sounds came to mind, like Anna, Nama. And then we realized that that name was very close to the maid's name who we'd given healing to many years ago. And then that light in a sari shivered off into light. It was true. The Kundalini had transformed our maid. Not immediately, not in 5 years, not in 10 years, but across 2, 3 lifetimes. And she was now the helper of the divine. The end of the first episode of the podcast series on the Kundalini. And she's right now very present in my being. And she's looking at you. Allow yourself to feel her touch and feel the spiral of her energy around you. What color do you think she is demonstrating right now? Thank you for subscribing to our channel, visiting creativechild.com, and growing with God.